and then we bought another 4-plex, and then 6-plex, 16 unit, 30. It just kept growing, and here I am today.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hello, welcome back to Pillars of Wealth Creation. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me today, I'm excited to have Alexandra Haider. Alexandra, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on and had you at our conference, the North Star Real Estate Conference. Oh boy, it's been a couple months now. Had you up on stage talking a little bit about commercial real estate. So that was a lot of fun. So I'm excited to have you on the show.
Thank you.
A little bit about Alexandra. She was a former 6th grade English teacher, and she was looking for her first duplex during that time. And now, fast forward over the last 3 years, Alexandra has since quit her teaching job, become a full-time realtor and investor that has approximately $20 million of both residential and commercial real estate properties, with a monthly rental income of over $120,000. She has a portfolio consisting of over 150 doors of residential and 50 commercial units throughout Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. Recently, along with a couple partners, she purchased her first retail strip mall in Eau Claire, and she's been navigating, and we'll dig into this as well, she's been navigating no money down deals, off-market deals. She loves stabilizing properties, stabilizing distressed real estate. So with that said, Alexandra, we're going to dive in, but why don't you give our listeners a bit more about your background and why real estate? What made you decide, hey, I don't want to be a teacher anymore?
Yeah. So basically, I went to school initially. I went to the U of M that time in Minnesota to be a veterinarian, and was in that program for maybe a year and a half. And I just knew I wanted to work with people. And so I kind of floundered for a while and didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I was like, well, I like helping people. So actually thought about being like a guidance counselor. My dad was like, you'll take it home with you. You'll be, just sad all the time. And so I decided on teacher. And I decided to be a psychology teacher. And my dad was like, no, you have to do a core subject. Otherwise, you're not going to find a job. I was like, okay, I guess I'll be an English teacher. I started off, I was actually at Brooklyn Center secondary I was in Brooklyn Center. At first, I was at a charter school, then the secondary for my first 2 years. I did really enjoy it, but I kind of knew after those 2 years, it wasn't necessarily what I was looking to do for my life. And my parents convinced me to try, a different school district for my last year, which I did. And I think just during that, I saw my parents growing up, they had rental properties, they had their job, they own an asbestos abatement company, but they had these rental properties on the side, which became their full-time job after they sold that company. And so I grew up with them. I spent my summers, especially during the transition period, because they had mostly student tenants. And so during the transition from when the tenants moved out before the new ones moved in, which was one crazy week, I spent my summers working with my parents, very hands-on. They'd have us even like painting the outsides of buildings. And, we worked with them, and they were very blue collar. They did everything themselves, which is awesome. But anyways, so as a teacher, I just kind of knew how I could supplement my income, because, I was coaching as I was teaching and just trying to basically make some decent money. And then I would also work during the summers, which is like the perk of it being a teacher, is having your summers off. But I didn't, because I really wanted to be able to travel. And if a medical expense came up, pay for it, everything like that. And so anyways, I started
What did you work in the summers? What did you do?
Well, I was a waitress, and I worked at Stella's.
Okay.
Yep. Which is where I met my husband.
Oh, perfect. Well,
there
you go.
So glad I did it all.
Right.
Glad I taught too. I really did like certain aspects of that. But anyway, so I worked as a waitress, and I taught, and I was looking for a duplex with my realtor. His name was Judd Boehner. He was awesome. I really liked working with him. We actually probably put in 10 to 15 offers, but at the time you really couldn't, it was so hard for me to get a duplex. It's not like I had more than 3% to put down. I was just one of many and I never got one. But during that time, I became pretty good friends with Judd. And he one time before we were leaving was like, can I talk with you about something? I was like, oh gosh, what is this? And he convinced me to go into real estate because he could just see my passion for it. And so I joined his team.
So he convinced you to go in as a realtor.
He did, yes.
Okay.
So what he and I discussed was I would join his team. He would kind of teach me how to do everything. I would still be a teacher and he would take my calls during the day. And then after work, I could have my own showings. I could do all of, what I had to do as a realtor. And I was very excited about that because at the time I was certain I was still going to be teaching. But I did summer school, which was half days, and I was a real estate agent. And at that point I knew there's just no way to do both even well, I could do both, but I would suck at both. So I was done teaching. My first real estate commission came exactly 2 weeks after my last teacher's paycheck. So I never really had a gap there, which was awesome. And that's because I, got paid through the summer as a teacher. So it did still take me like 3 months, but I had my paychecks coming in and I was doing summer school. And since then I was a realtor strictly, still looking for an investment for my first like 6 months or so. But as you know, without a W-2, it's really hard to get financing. So my first deal I ended up buying, my brother found for me. He's really awesome. He's a pretty big investor too, but it was a small single family house. I bought it for $16,000 cash, which was really an $8,000 loan from the bank, and then my own money. And it was a line of credit. And then basically went there every single weekend and worked. It was in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. There was no even service there.
I was going to ask you, how did you find a $16,000 house?
It was a cute house.
Because this wasn't that long ago. Like this wasn't.
It was November 2018.
2018, right?
Yep.
So the market has already recovered by that.
Yep.
Yeah, I was buying $16,000 houses back in like 2010, but
so this house was in a unincorporated village, population probably 50.
Wow.
Literally, I did not have cell phone service there, so like I couldn't even call somebody. I spent many hours like laying on the ground, crying and bleeding and trying to figure things out. Couldn't even call anybody. And I didn't want to stay overnight there either because somebody had just recently got abducted from there. And I was scared of it. And so anyways, people came with me, like my boyfriend at the time, husband now, he came with me a lot. And at the time he didn't really have any experience with this either. Now he's a licensed contractor. He's really gotten into it, but we were learning things as we go. Like my brother taught me how to do drywall, and it was like horribly embarrassing drywall because he started it with me, but then I finished it. And I thought it would be cool to paint the room blue, but the drywall was so bad that I wanted to do some texture, and then it looked like clouds in a whole room, and I laid there and cried because I had to redo it. But I mean, it was a good experience. I put probably $3,000 into that house total and a ton of time. And ended up selling it for $70,000 on a contract for deed a couple months later. So it was my starting point. Bought a couple other houses on contract for deed after that. And then I actually met my mentor and now a partner who I work with a ton, Rafik Moore, and he helped me to acquire my first multifamily property. So it was under his LLC. I was kind of like the on the ground, the grunt. I was originally going to live there, but he convinced me not to because he's like, this, you just cannot live there. It was kind of in a more dangerous neighborhood. But we ended up fixing that.
How many units was that?
That was a fourplex.
A fourplex? Okay.
we bought it for, I believe, 343, and then we sold it not even 6 months later for 460.
Nice.
And my husband and I worked there every night, same thing. But at this time I had a lot of clients as a realtor, so I was very busy. And he had I think he had already started his roofing company at that time. So we were both very busy, and we were literally there working at like 12 o'clock at night, and we'd feel bad because we feel like we're maybe being too loud for the other tenants, but we got it done, and it was a good experience. And then we bought another 4-plex, and then 6-plex, 16 unit, 30, it just kept growing, and here I am today.
That's awesome. What a story. And so, your first building, 2018,
Yep.
and now we're just a few years later, and I already read the bio. So people have heard that. What do you attribute to the growth that you've had? Because you've had some pretty impressive growth, going from really to nothing, right? Not owning
Yeah.
not owning anything, being a teacher. Teachers don't make $1 million a year. Everybody knows that. So what do you attribute to your impressive growth that you've had over the last couple of years?
The people who I've met, for sure. Yeah.
So the people that you've met, how did you meet those people? Like, what did you do to make those connections?
Yeah. So I think, the entire time that I've been a realtor, just the reason why I became a realtor, I'm very, very excited and passionate about this. I didn't realize it as a kid when I was working with my parents, but from the day I started looking for that duplex, I think it's always been very exciting to me. And still, I mean, it, even when I was on my honeymoon, it was like painful for me to not look into deals. Like I actually I loved my honeymoon and the vacation, but I was so excited to get back and start like looking again and connecting with the people who had emailed me. And I see these emails and I'm looking at it briefly. I'm like, this is a good deal. Like I want to talk with them, but I'm trying not to work because it's my honeymoon. And so I think the reason why I've met so many awesome people is because people see that and they like it. You want to work with somebody who loves what they're doing, and if they're doing what you're doing, I think it just has been, people have been maybe drawn to that, and they want to help me because they know that I will work hard and I'm really excited about what I'm doing. So like my mentor and somebody who I own probably around 130 doors with, he's Rafiq Moore. How I met him was I was working with some other contractors, and basically they told him that I was working with them. They knew him. He had invested money with them sometimes, and he actually brought me in because he had heard good things and that I really liked what I was doing. And I worked with them all the time, and it was very fun for me, and I still really I like them a lot to this day. They kind of stopped doing houses, but so he actually asked me to come in and interview for being his residential realtor. And shortly after, he kind of learned how passionate I was about it and how I wanted to keep growing. At that time, I only had a couple of houses, but I was always looking and bringing him good deals. And that's when he kind of brought up to me buying a 4-plex together. And really since then, that was probably 1.5 years ago, but probably over half of my portfolio is either with him or with him and my brother together. So, yeah.
So did you go over then and become a realtor through his brokerage?
Nope. Oh, you mean under his brokerage?
Yeah.
So technically I'm not under Caspian, I'm under Strata, which is like the sister company to Caspian, because they do residential and Caspian strictly commercial. And since when I started, I was basically strictly residential. That's where I am right now. Likely in Wisconsin, because we do have that retail strip mall there, and I want to be advertising under Caspian. I likely will. Caspian's thinking about getting their broker's license in Wisconsin, and then I would likely do Strata in Minnesota and Caspian under Wisconsin.
Got it.
Yep.
So let's talk strategy. And it sounds like you're doing some no money down. Sounds like you're getting into highly distressed. I shouldn't say sounds like, I know you're getting into some highly distressed properties. Well, let's just first lean on the no money down. What are you doing to get no money down? We're in a super hot market. It's very competitive. Um, you know, prices are going through the roof. Sellers can sell without no money down. So how
Yep.
are you convincing them? What are you doing? Is it just the approach? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So there's been a couple of different ways, but primarily it's just understanding why somebody is selling. So for example, my most recent purchase agreement I sent out was last night, and I asked for a 20% seller holdback. The reason why and why he's already agreed to this is so I kind of got to know this guy. His name's Rick. He actually owns an appliance shop in Waseca, where I own a majority or a large part of my portfolio. And basically he wants to focus on his appliance shop that he has, and they sell appliances, they fix them, that sort of thing. And so I got to know him pretty well. He knew that I was an investor. I started to understand that he owned all of these properties, but that he felt like he wanted to focus on, his main job, and he was getting tired. He had quite a few tenants who weren't paying during COVID. He was the hands-on person of a partnership, and he was just kind of exhausted. And him and I spoke a lot, and he would mention this. And then one day he actually reached out to me asking if I'd be interested in purchasing. And because I already knew that the reason why he wanted to sell was because he just wanted more time for his main job, I was able to say, well, what's your goal here? If you still wish you had that passive income, why don't you hold back the 20%? And, you're still getting a small monthly, it's not a ton. We're buying all these properties for $500,000. So $100,000 he's holding back, but he's getting 4% interest on his money. He's happy to still be getting passive income, as is his partner. He just can't put the time into this building anymore. He doesn't want to even sell it. He just has to sell it. He cannot handle all of this anymore.
Mhm.
And so I think it's just understanding why people are selling. And if their motive for selling is not that they need this huge sum of cash and they want to, put it into something else, or they're selling everything and moving somewhere, and they, if they don't need that full amount of the money, and especially if their mortgage is low enough that they can still pay off their mortgage and still invest with you, that's really what they're becoming, right? They're becoming an investor. They're the hands-off person. They're still making money on their money, better than they would make in the bank, and they don't have to deal with any of the problems anymore. So just kind of presenting it to them as, well, I'll give you your money, but you're also going to make more money off of this if you want to help me out. And typically, when I'm presenting this to people, they kind of have gotten to know me already. And even if it's just a meeting or two, they trust me. I explain that I've done this. I kind of preface things with, this is how I do things a lot of times, not necessarily going to even be offering on your property. But if I know somebody has properties, they already know that I try to do non-traditional financing, because I was a teacher 3 years ago, and I always tell people that too, I not necessarily have so much liquid cash just to throw into these properties, but I want to keep accumulating and growing my portfolio.
Right. Yeah, I think that's super important. You have to understand what the seller's really looking for. Just because I hear it all the time. Well, the market's hot. You can't do seller financing. You can't get that stuff when the market's hot. I think obviously you're proof of that. That you can actually do that, but you just have to understand what the seller actually wants. Getting to know the seller, I think that's really important. I think that helps a lot, and making sure the seller really understands what they're getting. When I do any seller financing offer, I really try to make sure the seller understands what it means. Because
Yep.
just because you say, hey, you do a 20%, carry back, they go, they don't even know what that means a lot of
For
times.
sure. Yep. And I definitely have to go through that every single time. And the other thing is, sometimes people don't want their properties back. I always say, if this doesn't work out, you get your property back. You already know it. But some people just want to be so done with this.
Mhm.
So you can actually, you can hold that 20% can be a lien on a different property as well. And often if it's a no for their own property, they will put it on another property. So
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I have not
Substitution
done
of collateral.
I've not done that, but that's
Yep.
really interesting that they don't want their property back necessarily. They probably have some nightmares about their
Yep.
property.
Yeah.
And so if you say,
Yep.
well, I got this nice shiny property over here. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. Especially if it can be in the same town. Like, oh, you love this property. You know these stores. There's an H&R Block in there, and these awesome, great tenants. I love my tenants in this building. If I don't pay you, you get that building.
you
So
get
it's
that
still
one.
not a headache for you.
Yeah, no, I like that approach. That's really creative. So you just ask like that's we send in offers. I don't know if you do this, but when we send in offers, we send in multiple offers. We send in one of them, or maybe two or three of them are different types of sellers financing, carrybacks, whatever it might be. And so that way we can allow them to choose.
Yeah. So you said in multiple for the same property.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times too. It's nice. Often they'll see a bigger number if they're willing to hold back money. And so that is helpful because often that helps you to get that type of financing, which is what you want, or I always want at least.
Absolutely. Love it. All right. And then what are you doing? You're finding these off market deals. This guy just came to you and said, hey, buy my property.
Yeah, he called me.
He
Yep.
called you up. Is that how most of your off market, or what are you doing to work off market deals?
Um, to be honest, in the beginning, I was doing a ton of cold calling. And I found properties that way. I actually wouldn't call it even cold calling. I certainly do not cold call. I do a ton of research. I know exactly how much they owe on their mortgage. I know essentially what I could offer. I know who they are, what other properties they own. I know everything about, as much as I can learn about this property before I call them. So they know I'm very serious about it. And I like to call in an area where I already have a property. Of course, in the beginning, I couldn't do that, but then now I can, where I say, hey, I own, these two properties in your town. It's really hard for me to pay a manager to be there. I'd love to grow my portfolio so that, I'm really getting a better return on my investment. I love your specific property. Often I'm calling somebody who I know has owned this property for 40, 50 years, likely looking to sell eventually. In the near future. So I do a lot of warm calling as well. Actually, recently Rafik and I spoke at I guess it's kind of like an investment meeting at Caspian. There were some investors who came in, and just for the sake of this, I was talking about how I do my calls. And so I tracked myself. I made 5 calls a day. I did it for 1 week. And of that, gosh, I have this written down somewhere, but I got 3 people who said, yes, they want to sell. And then a couple of more who, said follow up in a little bit. And I did not get any person yelling at me. I got no one screaming at me saying, leave me alone, hanging up. Everyone was like, oh, I would love to, but my son's actually managing and, he's going to take over, or they were nice to me. So I think a lot of people have this fear of cold calling, and it's hard. Like I imagine that if someone was hanging up on me all the time, screaming at me, basically I'm just getting shut down over and over. That to me is very unappealing. But the way that I've been making these calls and doing a lot of research takes a lot longer, but I think I get a lot more success with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're going to get a lot more no's if you know nothing about the property, right? If you're just completely, because I get a lot of cold calls that come in for people wanting to buy my properties. Hey, I'd like to buy your property. Which one?
Oh,
Well, I buy single family homes. Okay. I've got 50 of them. Which one do you want to buy?
right.
Well,
Yep. No, 100%. And I think also being able to say, hey, I'm your neighbor. I own this property. I love the area. I would love to purchase your specific property. This is what I know about it. People are a lot more kind to their neighbors too, I think. So
yeah. When just that connection makes you not want to yell at the person too.
Yeah.
When somebody calls me and they have no clue, it makes me want to go, hey, dummy, like,
Yep.
what are you
No, I
doing?
get
Like,
it
what are
because
you doing?
I
Like,
feel the same way.
you
And
know,
I don't want to be called a dummy, so I do my due diligence.
I try to be nice, but
Yeah.
but at the same time, like, that's how you get yelled at.
Yep.
You don't get yelled at
Absolutely.
when you say, I know about your property. I really like the area. I've got properties nearby, blah, 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 blah. And you've got a story and you've got a reason for your call other than just, I'm just a scavenger looking for your property.
Yep. And I think it's nice too to say, I bought Alan Charlie's property for $33 a door, a door, $33,000 a door. And so likely that's what I could offer you depending on condition. So they know, okay, well, I can go talk to Alan Charlie, who I know because a lot of my properties, as you know, are in small towns and they know each other. And then they realize they put the face to the properties. And yeah, I think it's worked out well for me as well.
Let's talk small towns and the benefits and the difficulties of small towns. So you're in a lot of small towns
Yep.
within what, 4 hours or so of the Twin Cities?
Yeah, I would say within 4 hours. I own properties in small town Iowa, like
Yep.
3.5 hours throughout Minnesota away from me.
Yep.
That's my furthest one in Minnesota, and then Wisconsin.
Yep. Yeah. And Eau
Yeah.
Claire, that's obviously a bigger town, but still small relative terms. Um, what's the attraction of small towns, first of all?
The return on the investment.
Okay. So cash flow.
Yeah, I feel I can find better deals
Yeah.
in small towns, and they're getting less of those calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that we're buying a lot of assisted living and we're buying in small towns outside of the
Okay.
Twin Cities. So I understand that. So cash flow, likely better returns. How are you managing them? That's the real question, because that's the difficulty, right? When you're in the Twin Cities, you've got millions of people to choose from, to manage your properties, to do the construction on your properties, to, just everything. How are you managing in small towns? What are you doing that's been successful? And maybe even what are some challenges that you've ran out along?
This is really funny you're asking this because as of January 1st, I am completely switching up what I'm doing. So I had been
We'll have to dig into what that means. So go ahead.
Yeah. So basically up until this point, I had one main girl who was like the point of contact, and then I had on-site maintenance people, and then 2 VAs in the Philippines that were, filtering through the calls.
Filter through what kind of calls?
Maintenance calls.
Maintenance calls. Okay.
Yep. And that worked all right. The issue is that when push came to shove and somebody wasn't answering, it always came back to me. And now that my portfolio is, I could do it when it was 20 units, 25 units, but it's too big now. And I simply cannot be the main point of contact for everything.
Right.
And so starting on January 1st, so my main girl, Gavhar is her name. She was kind of the point of contact before me. And she's actually having a baby. And so she is going to be going home and, living with her child. But it actually, I think, is going to be for the best because I have reached out to multiple different companies. One of them is Mike Temple, who I met at the real estate conference.
Yep.
He'll be taking over St. Paul, but and finding local managers, not so much necessarily even in the same city. Like, for example, I have properties in Lafayette, Minnesota, Waseca, and soon to be Janesville. And so I found somebody in Mankato, and they're managing that whole little area. It's within 30 minutes of them in any direction. And I interviewed quite a few companies, and I'm looking to have boots on the ground more so than I do. So yeah, there has been a lot of challenges. The biggest challenge is when there's an issue and you have to get there, you're 3.5 hours away. We went through the process of, we had a property in Slayton, Minnesota, which is a very small town. And we had a property manager that wasn't working out for us for a multitude of reasons. And so we ended up getting rid of her, and we had to find another one. And, it was a challenge. And my brother and I co-own that property, and we're like, are we going to be managing this ourselves? Like, it's 3.5 hours away. We cannot stick with what we're currently doing, but also I can't be spending 7 hours of my day driving out to look at a toilet. There's no way. And I can't be showing apartments, like, driving that far to even show an apartment. We ended up, and this is what I've been trying to do a lot, finding a tenant that we really like, and giving them a steep discount. They don't have to even be, especially in Slayton. She doesn't have a background in property management, but she's just our boots on the ground. She's nice, she's trustworthy, she's well-spoken, and she's happy to help. She actually was looking for a job. And so we found this awesome tenant, Alicia. When I met her to show her her unit, immediately I was like, oh my gosh, I called my brother. I was like, I really want Alicia to help us with this property. And so she's kind of stepped into that role there. But I would say, as far as in general, that is the biggest challenge. And that's, you give and you take, and maybe I'm getting a better income for what I put into these properties, but there's a lot more challenges with that as well. And it's the time that I spend finding somebody local and good to help me with this property. And if it doesn't work out, that's just a disaster too. It's like, oh my gosh, 3.5 hours over again to meet somebody, and hopefully they work. And if they don't work, I cannot just go with them, because that's not going to be a long-term solution. I'm going to be back here again in a couple of months. So,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and every time I buy a property like this, I know what I'm getting into. I understand that this could be a lot more work until I get it set up in the way it needs to be. And I won't know for a couple of months once I put something in place.
Yeah. That's one of the challenges. And quite frankly, it's still a challenge, even if you were buying,
Local.
larger city.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a challenge. I mean, you don't know until you put something into place. You do your best to get your homework done, right? To vet people, but you don't really know until that happens. I mean, we had a really bad experience recently with an actual owner that stayed on, and onto one of our assisted living, and he stayed on, and we had a really bad experience. You don't know. I mean, the person seemed like an amazing person. The property was running what appeared to be very, very smoothly. And we found out some really bad things. So
what did you do?
we kicked him out and hired new people.
Yep.
We immediately kicked him out, and it was a scary week, basically, because we had to get rid of him while a couple of our top staff were out for COVID protocol. And so it was a mess. But you can't keep bad people in either. And
Exactly.
especially when you're dealing with assisted living, you just can't keep people in. But
and that's like, for us, when you had to get rid of somebody, you're like, oh my gosh, like,
yeah,
I don't want to, but I have to. Like, it's
to.
so much more work, but you just have to nix it and get them out of there.
And you have to get rid of them. It's not, if you say this is bad, I have to get rid of somebody, you have to do it now.
Yep.
And you have to then figure out how to replace them. You can't just let it drag on, because once you're like, well, I'll find somebody to replace them and then I'll replace them. If it's actually bad, that just doesn't work. You got to get rid of them. So.
Agreed. Another thing too was that I've been doing more that I didn't used to is cameras in the hallways, cameras everywhere other than in the units. Because when it's far away, it's very easy for somebody to say, oh, I spent 30 hours cleaning the day room or cleaning the hallways, and you cannot prove that they didn't, but you know that they didn't, right? But to have those cameras there and have them know that there are cameras, I think you're a lot less likely to be stolen from. So.
Yeah, that's great advice. And that is so simple. And even if you're not really monitoring that camera, maybe here and there, but it's really easy when you go, wait a second, you didn't spend that much. There's no way you did. You can go, we'll just check the camera.
Yeah, because they know you're not going to be showing up. You call them when you're coming because you're driving 3.5 hours to get there, or 4 hours.
They're there.
You want them to be there so they know every time you're coming. It's not like a hot buy. So the camera system has been saving grace, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. You could do that in any property in those common areas. Of course, not in somebody's personal unit, but in
Yeah.
any common area,
Yep.
commercial, in any in the whole building, really,
Yep.
you could do it. So that's great.
And
What's
then it's
a
just begging the cameraman, will you please come with me another 8 hours? I'll buy you food, pay you.
Love
So
it.
yeah.
Um, what's a mistake that you have made, and how have you learned from it?
Yeah. So for me, my biggest mistake has come from just not trusting my gut instinct. Um, like for example, with that property manager who I had to get rid of, there was quite a few red flags. Uh, Anytime somebody is talking really bad about everyone else they've worked with, like
Mm, yeah.
it's a red flag. But I have found, and I'm trying to really change this, but sometimes when it's a small town, you're just like so thankful to find somebody who knows what they're doing. And maybe I've let things slide and not listen to my gut. After my first time meeting with our old property manager, my brother and I spoke, and we're like we're not sure, but we don't know who else, so we'll just give it a try. And we've spoken since, and we're like, there's just, you have to follow your gut instinct on these things, because I could have avoided the whole mess if I had listened to what I already knew, in my heart.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think my mistake is just not listening to my gut instinct.
Yeah, that can be very valuable. I like that when someone complains about everybody else, they're probably the problem.
Yep.
And I've learned that lesson too many times.
Yeah. Not
And you
everyone
think,
sucks in the world.
yeah, you think, wow, this person really they've got a lot. I mean, we just did it recently. We had a person that seemed like very good, but they complained about everybody.
Yeah.
And we needed this major culture change and all this kind of stuff. And it was them. They needed to be got rid of to
Yep.
change the culture. They were the one
Exactly.
causing the culture
Yep.
problem. So yeah, so I love that. You got look at who's complaining. They're probably the problem themselves.
Yeah. I mean, if everyone in your life is horrible to you, you have to look at yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say probably you too. Most of the people that we meet are pretty awesome, and
Yeah.
who we hang out with and who I work with. And I don't know.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's 100% right. All right. A couple last questions before we wrap up. This has been a lot of fun, by the way. What what's one or two like key ingredients to your success beyond the people?
I think the main thing I can say about that is just how much I love it.
So your
I'm
passion.
super passionate about it. And so I think, I likely, and I'm not even likely, I was not as good of a teacher as I am at this, because my heart wasn't fully in it. There was something else I wanted to be doing. Um, and this is, I wake up every morning, and of course there's bad days. And of course there's people who are rude to you, or, steal from you or whatever. But
Yeah.
For the most part, it's just, I absolutely love it. It's super fun to me. It's exciting. I love the people who I work with.
Why do you think you love it so much? What is there anything that you would say like you pick out that why you love it, or just like a lot of the stuff, or what do
Yeah.
you
I'm very, very, very competitive. And I think that finding a really good deal and getting it when there's like other offers there, or able to negotiate something awesome when, everyone, people around me have said, oh, I've tried for forever to get a hold of this person. They don't answer. That to me is a challenge.
So it's
And
more of
I
that the chase,
love that.
the
Yes, it's the
yeah.
chase. And then it's really fun to me to, you can never rent out. I've had so many buildings where, it's been owned by someone, and, the whole first floor is vacant for forever. And, oh yeah, like there's nothing going on in this town or whatever. And to get that fully stabilized, and then to sell it afterwards. And, it's fun to me. It's like, yes, we freaking did it. And everything about it to me is super fun. And so I think people can just tell that I love what I do. I think that's been actually really helpful for me in being successful, because people like to, especially if they like it themselves, people like to surround themselves with like-minded people.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about being passionate and really loving what you do. It not only helps, it'll help in all aspects. It helps your attitude when stuff goes wrong, right?
Yep.
When somebody's stealing from you or when things go wrong, you still have that passion and you still love what you do. If you don't love what you do, somebody's stealing from you and things are going wrong, you're like, geez, what am I doing this for, right?
Right.
Um, but then it just, I think it really helps a lot of people trust you, right? They see the passion, they see the burning desire that's in you, and they feel it, and that in turn creates a lot of trust.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
and that's actually the second thing that I would say is just, being completely transparent.
mm,
I've messed up before, of course. And I specifically remember one time I missed a due diligence. I actually had sent out, I think we were trying to negotiate a discount, and our due diligence was ending that day. And then I went to a wedding and they never sent it back. And so I had to call Rafik the next day. I was like, I really messed up. Like, I think we're stuck in this, if they want to stick it to me, they never sent it back. I didn't cancel. I technically was locked into something that I didn't want to be locked into. And I messed up. I just forgot about it.
right.
I went to a wedding and that was that. But having to be upfront, I'm not going to, I think that people appreciate, honesty, and
Yes.
everyone has messed up that I'm around, and I've messed up multiple times. And, luckily in that case, the sellers were not, they didn't hold us to it, and they actually ended up signing, what we had wanted. And I had sent it to them that day, but then I forgot about it and just let it go. And, but I think being able to be upfront and not trying to hide anything, and just, honesty. And with my partners too, we're all super honest with each other, and I completely trust them. I know that I don't have to watch our bank accounts. I don't have to, we're just so honest with each other. And I think, I've been around a lot of honest people. I personally, I'm sleeping very well at night because I don't think I'm trying to hide something from anybody. And
Mm.
I think, just passionate and honest is two really big key factors.
Yeah, so important, that honesty and that just being open to communication and just super transparent. I love that. Um, all right, two last questions before we wrap up. What's a favorite book that you can recommend to our listeners?
Yeah. So actually, my, and like I told you before, I hate saying favorite anything.
That's why I said
But
a favorite, one of the
yeah,
favorites.
I'll tell you my favorite. So, a book, it was actually recommended to me, by my mentor, Rafik. And I would say, of books that, I kind of think apply to life, I really like The Go Giver.
It's a great book.
Yeah, and it's one of the few books that it's really short. So I've read it multiple times, listened to it. And I think it is so true. You give, more than you get. And I think always trying to provide people with more service than they expect, and not necessarily even expecting anything in return. But just being a giving person, and trying to help people, and not being, selfish and trying to hide all of your knowledge or your secrets. I don't believe in that. So I think that book is one that I kind of live my life by, and I completely agree with. And so far, so good. And I work with people who also follow the same philosophy, and because of Rafik being so much that way, I've learned so much, and grown my portfolio, which has, grown his. And I don't know. I think it's just
Yeah,
a good book to follow.
yeah, I agree. Love it. All right. So last question. What are your three pillars of wealth creation?
All right. So this is, something I had to think about. Just three things that I would say, have helped me to become wealthy. That's all on a scale. But, first thing I would say is love what you do. So I think if you don't love what you do, you're never going to be successful at it. And I actually wrote them down, so I'm reading them. Surround yourself with honest and like-minded individuals. So definitely, if I wasn't surrounded by the people I'm surrounded with, I would be nothing. My problems would be worse because I would have nobody to talk to about them. I never would have grown in the way that I have in the last couple of years. And I think just the people you're around, super important. And then the last thing is, don't be afraid to take calculated risks. So, I have, especially in the last 6 months, had a lot of people reaching out saying, they want to start getting started in investing and please help them find a property. And there's been multiple times where I have negotiated 20% holdback. You can get this deal. I'm going to take the other one, but you get this one if you want it. Get started. And people get scared and they want it, but they're not willing to make that risk, because every single time you buy a property, it is a risk. And I guess I'm just not so scared. So I'm okay with taking the calculated risk, as you are, and any investor.
Yeah, anybody that's going to have real success is going to have to take a calculated risk, going to have to surround themselves with amazing people, and you got to love what you do. And those are definitely three massive pillars if you want to have a successful business and create wealth. I love them. Alexandra, how can our listeners get in touch with you, learn more, have a conversation with you?
Yeah. So I'm not really big on like Instagram or anything like that, but they can certainly email me. So I can tell you my email. Should I just say my email right now?
Yeah, why don't you? And then we'll throw it in the show notes too.
Okay, perfect. So it's Alexandra at karinasimone.com. So KARINASIMONE. And that's my email address. I do have a personal Instagram, but I'm not really, my passion is not being online.
Instagram. Yeah.
Yes.
I hear you there.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, really appreciate the time. I think you've given our listeners a ton of great information. Very inspiring. You've done a lot in 3 years, and I'm super excited to have you on in another 3 years and talk about, the amazing journey that you've gone through. And I know where you're going to be in, give it 2 years, 3 years from now is going to be very impressive. So excited to have you on the show, and excited to be able to call you a friend. So thank you so much for joining us, and you have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thank you so much. It was great. Adios.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience, and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out, and we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.